Agni parthene despina achrande Theotoke
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Orthodox Logos, aka the Road to Paradise, aka
the Traditionalist Project.
Yeah,
Also known as two nerds and that one weird guy who knows about technology and stuff.
basically. So yeah, today we are going to be talking about Tolkien
Why are we doing that, Ian?
because 2 days ago was national or worldwide Tolkien
It's Tolkien Reading Day.
Tolkien Reading Day. As Nathan, he goes, "What is today?" And I think I said Friday.
The Annunciation?
Yeah, the Annunciation.
The Annunciation.
Friday.
I think I
No, more important than that. More important than that.
I think I said, in addition to it being the Annunciation, what else notable is going on today?
Friday? I don't know.
I mean, why you would think that's notable, I don't understand.
But yeah, so a few days ago, it was Tolkien Reader Day. If you guys aren't aware, these guys are complete nerds.
You're the one that has the reader. I just have primary source material.
I pick up anything Tolkien just so that Nathan does it, and then it just sits on my shelf and collects dust. But that being said,
You see what kind of friends I've got, Isaac?
yeah, well, anyway, so today we're going to talk about Tolkien and why is Tolkien Christian? How can we interpret it as Christian storytelling? And we are joined by Isaac from the Traditionalist Project. Welcome, Isaac. Thank you again for putting up with us.
Thanks for bringing me on specifically for Tolkien, because I could sit here and do this all day. So
Yeah, well, good thing we don't have all day.
yeah,
We can make it all day. I'll hold Ian hostage or something, and we'll make this like a 6-hour interview. We'll go full Lord of Spirits status and
You're
just
in-
on for hours.
You're in my house. How are you going to hold me hostage?
I mean, I highly doubt you want to sit in that chair all day.
Cool. So yeah, there's a lot of debate online. Obviously, that can be a tricky place about Tolkien and his storytelling, whether or not it's Christian, if it's just, merely fantasy. And in my opinion, it's both. And I think that we can all agree it's both, but there's also an aspect of it that we see a lack of today as far as beauty. There's so much in his storytelling that is expressed through a Christian point of view, such as justice, his view on nature, freedom. And I guess a way we could start is you guys, how did you find Tolkien? What was the first thing you read or saw, and how has it influenced your journey into Orthodoxy or your journey into Christianity in general? And Isaac, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot and have you share first.
sure, let's go. But I must start with the reason why I don't have my camera on is because there are two finely bearded gentlemen, and I would be the oddball out. It's impossible. I can't do it. No beard. I don't think I ever will be able to do it. So,
Have you read Canon 36? I'm kidding.
Isaac is not a priest.
I don't know if it's 36, but yeah. Someone the other day, someone the other day said something, because I posted a picture of our parish priest, and sometimes he does have facial hair, but I'm not sure if he can, it's not my place. I'm not sure if he can grow like a massive beard. And someone commented, oh, he's not Orthodox. And I'm like, oh, okay.
He was born and raised in Romania as an Orthodox Christian. He's more Orthodox than any of us.
So yeah, that was
no beard, no salvation. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much, I guess.
There is a great St. Augustine quote that refers to the virtue of being bearded as being so closely tied to chastity and piety that someone who is pursuing the Christian faith accurately is referred to as a bearded man. I believe it's St. Augustine or St. Basil the Great that said that.
Well,
yeah, the only people that don't have beards, Nathan.
Women and children.
Yeah.
And I must be one of those two. Find out next episode for the patron.
You can be anything you want to be, buddy. No, but yeah, that comment kind of threw me off, and I was like, I'm turning comments off, because pretty sure you telling me my priest isn't Orthodox is the most unorthodox thing you could possibly comment.
Yeah,
So,
probably.
but yeah, so back to the subject. How did you find Tolkien? When did you find Tolkien? And now that you're newly illumined and part of the Orthodox Church, is there a different way that you interpret things, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, Tolkien has kind of always been around. My dad is a big reader and was a huge Tolkien fan. So it just kind of, it was always around. But I think the first time I really got exposed to it was probably 3rd grade.
Wow, so you were what, like 11?
I have no idea. I don't
9?
3rd grade's like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Something like that. And all the family was chilling in the house. And it was kind of like a weird time because my house had like just burned down. So we were in this tiny rental house, right? And we had like nothing to do. There was nothing. And we were in a town of like, or a village of maybe 400 people, right? Nothing going on. And my dad was like, you know what? Let's just have all the family gather on. We're going to watch all 3 Lord of the Rings in a row. And I was like, don't know what that is. Let's do it. All right. And I remember, yeah, it was the first time I watched it. And I was just completely enamored by, I guess as a kid, just kind of the action and like the fantasy and the storytelling of it. Because prior to that, I mean, I had been growing up reading like King Arthur and the Round Table and
Right.
things like that, and fantasy-esque things.
You get those kind of visuals then with
yeah. And I had been playing RuneScape, you know. And
oh man.
Yeah.
Dated yourself.
Yeah, and it
probably played at the public library too, didn't you?
Well, actually, no. I was but there was like a computer lab in my small little Christian school, and I would load it up in secret and play there.
So you went to a Christian, what, elementary?
I was in a private Christian school from preschool to freshman year of high school.
Did you wear one of those little skirts?
It's Catholic.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was like I don't even know what they call it. It's like a non-denominational, like we're just Christian. That's what we are. We're just Christian.
Right.
We don't need a label. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, rolled with it, right? And it also, like, the Lord of the Rings, the first time I saw Lord of the Rings coalesced with the first time I ever figured out what World of Warcraft was. So it was like a fantasy overload. And I was like, all my dreams are here, they're coming true. And it was just the best thing ever. And ever since then, I was a huge fan, but not really on a deeper level. I just liked it because I thought the characters were cool and the story was good.
Yeah, it had that like mystical and divine feeling.
Yeah, no. It was more just like, wow, look at these guys chopping up orcs. This is great, you know. And like, no. I mean, whatever. What are you gonna? What am I supposed to think when I'm in 3rd grade?
No.
Right? Those concepts aren't really there. And it's not like anyone was really guiding me either. Like my dad wasn't like, all right, we're gonna watch this because it means this and this and this. This is a symbol. He was like, nah, just be a kid and enjoy it. And
that's kind of how it is.
Toy bow, acting like you're legless. Go ahead. Like,
yeah, I just recently showed my now 6-year-old son Lord of the Rings, and we binge watched it. Luckily, he has some sort of idea, you know, as to what it means, but same thing for him. He was like, this is cool. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
You know, you're 6. That's fine for you to think, and I was stopping it and pausing it and explaining things to him, and he just wanted to watch the movie.
Right.
So what you're saying, Ian, is you're a nerd.
Pretty much.
Uh-oh. Yeah, but like from there, I mean, we would watch all the time, like kids do, you know, like you watch a movie one day and like you watch like 5 times in the same day. So like
your parents hate you.
Yeah. So I'm learning all the lines.
You drink a whole 6-pack of Dr. Pepper.
Oh yeah. Well, I was like a weird Mountain Dew kid, not gonna lie.
Oh,
that was like
I had a really
normal.
Is that why you're not showing your face? Because like you drank Mountain Dew and smoked.
Yeah, my
meth.
skin is just disgusting. I'm like just I lurk in the Appalachian Mountains on the weekends. That's what I do. No, but we would watch it over and over and over, and then eventually my dad he would kind of turn our ear to certain lines that were in the movie and be like, well, pay attention to this, and like, you know, this matters, or you know, like, or he'd ask me like, what do you think about that, or this, like, or he it would be funny because I would see him be enamored by the movie, or when a certain line came up, I would see he would pay extra attention. I was like, okay, this means something. There's something going on here. And then it wasn't till high school really where something shifted when I was watching the movie. It was literally just like routine. Me and my family, we would just watch it every couple of months. I think it was like my sophomore or junior year of high school. And I don't remember what exactly it was or what specific quote it was, But as I was just going through the movies, I could actually, you know what it was? It was the Shire. Nothing in particular about it. Nothing. No quote. Nothing extraordinary about it. But I would have this conversation with my sisters and whatnot after the movie, and we would just talk about, like, what is it about the Shire? Like, why is it when we watch the Shire, it's something that we desire? It's like it's something that we long for. Even like I've never like I'm not that's not my type of thing. I'm not a gardener, you know. I'm not I'm not living under huts. Like I don't. It's just, but why is
you
this
are a
simple
smoker
life?
and a drinker, which makes you a really
and
good
I am
hobbit.
and I am short. So I mean, it's all coming together, right? Bit by bit.
We wouldn't know. We haven't seen you. You have hairy feet?
No, I'm not particularly hairy. I think so.
Established that already.
yeah, I should have. Yeah, but I remember I was like, well, what is like why like why does it evoke such an emotion of like longing, but also it makes sense. There was like it's hard to put into words. And then when I started asking these questions with my family and watching a bit closer, then everything I was watching closely and like quotes that Gandalf says regarding, and I know we're going to get into quotes eventually, but regarding Gollum and why he shouldn't have been slain, and like why, who are we to decide who lives or who doesn't live, and like I'm like, whoa, how come I didn't pick up on that? I've been watching this for years, I didn't pick up on that, but that's a very profound thing to say, and from then on, literally from high school, I was like, I need to dive into this. Bought every book, went through everything, got Silmarillion pilled. I've been a certified nerd ever since then. Got a license in my wallet, and yeah. So it's been a long journey, and I was actually just telling a friend literally earlier this week. I was like, it's sad that I've read all that Tolkien has to offer, and I'll never have that feeling again of entering for the first time and not knowing what's around the corner, what's on the next page. And part of that makes me sad, but another part of it is like, it sounds weird, but Tolkien is actually a huge part of my life. Like his works they're just as important and valid to me as reading stories from history and characters from history,
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of epics. And I think that's what Tolkien perfected is.
It's like reading the Iliad.
100%. Yeah.
I don't read the Iliad as often as I read Tolkien, but it's like every time I do, I know Hector's gonna die, and it's like every time I'm like, no, man, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Listen to your mother. Go back and tell the city. Every time.
Right. I mean, I get the same thing when I watch the films, when I watch The Lord of the Rings, and it gets to that point where Frodo turns away Sam and tells him to go home, and you're like, oh, your heart breaks, and it's like, I've seen this, and like, what is going on here? But I think that speaks to the power of the truths that are held within Tolkien's works. It'll always appeal to us, even if we know it's coming. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's the same way when we read scripture, when we read the gospel, right?
Yeah.
Like reading up to Christ and his crucifixion, like that'll never not break your heart. You know what I mean? And,
Well, I mean, it's what the Paschal services do for us, man. There's the particular hymn that is sung that's sung from the perspective of the Virgin Mary when she sees Christ come walking by with the cross, and she's like, "Where are you going? To Cana? Is there another wedding that you're going to make wine for?" And it's like every time I hear that hymn, it's like, okay, I'm going to steel myself and I'm going to be able to sing the hymn. And I don't think I've ever been able to sing it. Just like,
yeah. I had to. This is a kind of off topic, but there's a metal band called For Today, and they have a song called Crown of Thorns, and I was listening to it with my son, and he asked what they were saying, and I had to explain to him what the Crown of Thorns was. And I mean,
it's a hard thing to explain. Like when you know it, it's one thing, but when you have to say, yeah, so hey, 6-year-old son.
Yeah, and I don't know. I still get that feeling sometimes just looking at the icon of Christ, where I just, you guys already know, but explaining that to my son, like, oh, this is what they did. Oh, why'd they do that, Dad? And it's like a story that, like, just with Tolkien, as many times as you read it or you hear it, it still evokes that same emotion. And luckily for me, I'm just getting into Tolkien in a heavier, more, I guess you could say, spiritual way. And I'm blessed to, to still have those feelings every time I pick up a book and read his words.
Mm.
And I know one day I'm eventually going to be like, okay, I've read it all, but I still think that it it resonates with you and it lives with you, and it's something you can use day to day, and it's a sense of beauty that we don't have anymore. I mean, we have people like that do podcasts, and Jonathan Pajot, for example, he's re-enchanting the world with explaining symbolism and bringing things back to beauty. But it's like, I haven't seen or read anything that comes close to Tolkien,
Dude,
since I've been able to see or read.
dude, one of the things that's fantastic about living up here in Flagstaff, living in the mountains, is being able to kind of experience visuals that pull you to Tolkien. So up here on one of the mountains that's really close to us, there's a bunch of aspens on them, and some of these aspens, depending on where you are so big you can't reach around them. I mean, they're 75 feet tall, 80 feet tall, and they're like 7 or 8 feet in diameter. They're huge. And maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but you show up in the fall when all the leaves are gold, and it's like, I mean, you're in Lothlorien.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I was up on one of these trails where all the, where there's these huge old aspen groves. I was riding through right about sunset. It was, because I mountain bike a lot. So I was riding through there. And as I came into one of these groves, the sun kind of peeked out from behind some clouds and everything turned to gold and silver. And I just kind of stopped. I almost crashed. I stopped and I was like, this is Lothlorien. This is what Tolkien saw. I was like, wow. And I mean, I just kind of sat there for like 5 or 10 minutes. This is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy when beauty coalesces like that. I did the same thing back when I was living in Wisconsin. There's lakes everywhere. Like, you can't drive in one direction for 5 miles without there being a lake of some sort. So I would pop in an audiobook because I'm like, I don't want to just walk in silence. Sometimes I want to listen to something or listen to a story. And so I went through the Silmarillion, walking around this lake path that goes for about 20 miles around, and it's just beautiful. You're in elevation, but then the lake and the beautiful trees, and it's a different experience. It's a completely different experience than if I were to just sit in my room and read it, which is fine as well. But yeah, when it all comes together like that, it almost is. It's a spiritual, metaphysical journey. You're not in. Right. I was actually telling this to a friend earlier this week. It's like when I'm reading Tolkien, it's so powerful and it's so convincing that I'm not here. It's as if I'm not here anymore. And there'll be times where I'll have a really terrible week, right? And it's Friday or it's Saturday, and I'm like, I don't want to think about what's going on. I don't want to know what's going on. I don't want to be here right now. So I'm going to open up Tolkien, and you know what? I'm not going to be here anymore. It's so powerful. It's as if I'm in Lothlorien when I'm reading it. It's as if I'm in the halls, with the Eldar and all of them in Valinor. It's as if I'm there. It's like when I'm listening to dialogue between two characters, it's as if I'm there, and I find myself giving an opinion on their conversation as if it means anything. But I mean, that's how powerful it is, And what's strange is, like to what Ian was saying, I've never found anything close to that, especially contemporarily, right? When it comes to storytelling.
King Arthur can get you there.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis can. Like, I'll say this, like, Ian and a lot of other people.
But that's still not. I wouldn't even say that's contemporary.
I mean, it depends on the Arthur myth that you read. Stephen Lawhead wrote his King Arthur stuff in like the 90s. So I mean, it's fairly contemporary and it's good. It's really, really good.
Right.
When the way he writes the death of Arthur and the sadness of Guinevere is just poignant beyond belief. But I don't know.
I think what's strange is I was actually thinking about this a couple days ago because actually a follower of the Traditionalist Project was telling me she was reading or watching, I don't remember, the Chronicles of Narnia or the Narnia movie, I think.
You should probably marry her.
Which one?
Wow.
The old agency ones?
That's crazy because the
Disney ones sucked.
Whichever the recent ones were. I understand they're not good movies. They're not good movies, right?
Well, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was good. I'll give it that. That one was really good. But Prince Caspian and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader were horrible.
I didn't even watch it. But I was thinking, I was like, why do I like the Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, whatever, way more than Narnia? They're both fantasy. One's more explicitly Christian than the other, Narnia, right?
Right.
but in a weird way, I think that's why I don't enjoy Narnia as much as I enjoy Middle Earth and the Silmarillion, because it's too clear, it's too obvious that it's the story of Christ. Like, and to me, which is not a bad thing, and it definitely serves its purpose, right?
Right.
But when I read Tolkien, and when I'm going through that, my mind isn't automatically drawn to, oh, this character is Christ-like, or oh, this symbol, and you know what I mean. But it reveals itself in a different way, maybe a more subtle way, maybe in a way that you don't realize right away, but you ponder it for a little bit, and then it hits you, and you're like, wait a minute.
Have you ever thought about reading Narnia as a commentary on Lord of the Rings?
What?
So,
Telling you, dude, this guy's a nerd.
and I don't mean as like a line by line correspondence where it's like, oh, if you want to understand this, go to this section of The Magician's Nephew, and this will explain the Silmarillion. But kind of this notion of how a modern interacts with fantasy. It's kind of like a meta commentary, right? Like there's the and we'll talk about this later, so I don't want to give it too much. I don't want to spoil it too much, but this notion when Santa shows up, when St. Nicholas shows up and is giving gifts to
Hold on. Okay.
when Santa's giving gifts to Peter and Lucy and Susan, and he gives Susan and Lucy each a weapon. And he says, by the way, these are only for self-defense. And they're like, well, why? Why can't we fight? And he says, because wars are ugly when women fight. Right? And like, if you read particular bits of Lord of the Rings, that is not said, but you see that and it's like, oh yeah, wars are definitely ugly when women fight. And it shouldn't, well, it's not useless. It's different and it's not good.
Interesting. I've never thought of comparing them like that, or putting them side by side like that. And I think so. That's kind of my thing, though, that I never liked about English classes and literature classes, although they were some of my favorite. Was I think there's a certain point where you can dissect a work too much, to where it's like, you've killed it, right? So like with a lot of poetry, which I hated with poetry in school, it was like, well, let's go line by line, stanza by stanza, word by word, and I'm like, okay, but at the end, these kids they don't know what the purpose of this is. Like they're not trying to really take it in. Now you've killed it. You know,
the thing that needs to be resolved is the you teach people to appreciate poetry because poetry is beautiful. That's kind of where it starts and ends. It's not like, what is the hidden meaning in Emily Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe or Samuel Coleridge? It's like, no, just it's good poetry. Just read it. Right.
And maybe I wasn't being charitable, but I had a friend a while back who was getting into Tolkien a little after I had already did a deep dive, and he was like, you gotta read this book, and he shows me this book about finding Christ in the Lord of the Rings, and it's a whole thing of that or something like that. And I was like,
I read that when I was a kid,
and I was like, that's cool and all, but I told him like, I just like Lord of the Rings, man. Like, just let me read. Like, there's a certain bit where it's like, I just want to read this.
Well, you can find Christ in Tolkien without reading a book telling you how to find Christ in Tolkien.
Now, the more scandalous book would be Finding the Virgin Mary in Lord of the Rings.
Is that a
no, but that would be more scandalous.
I want to note that Nathan brought me a beer, and I'm like almost ashamed to drink it on camera because I don't like that it's in like this huge can.
It was like $2.
I really want to just pour this into it. I don't like this at all.
Put it in a wine glass. Be fancy.
Gross.
Cheers. I really hate that you brought this.
Cheers.
Like, I feel like I should be under a bridge painting graffiti or something.
I hate it. For his tagging.
I hate it so much. Are you really telling me? Okay. Anyway, but no, yeah. So we were talking about how Finding the Virgin Mary.
Well, no, it's not a matter of finding her. I'm just saying that book would be, all when Lord of the Rings came out, all the evangelicals were like, find God in Lord of the Rings. And it's then you become Orthodox or Catholic and you read Lord of the Rings and you're like, find the Blessed Lady in here.
Yeah.
Around every corner.
Yeah, honestly. How many female characters are there that are just completely lauded and praised? Sometimes simply just because they're beautiful, right? And it's like, I would fight a whole war for you,
Dude, there was who's the guy that wrote The Golden Compass or his Dark Materials or whatever that freaking series is called?
I have no idea. I don't even know what it is.
It's
Oh, yeah,
really
that's
really
a-
bad atheist fantasy. It's not even just atheist, it's
Blasphemous.
anti-Christian fantasy.
Atheist fantasy. Can
That's
you
what they
be
try to
atheist
do.
and make good fantasy? I don't think that's
Well,
possible.
here's why it's not actually atheist fantasy. So you know that Stephen DeYoung quote where he says, or Father Stephen DeYoung quote where he says, every atheist is dragging around the body of the God that they wish didn't exist. Like
Wow.
this, I've to be fair, I've never read this guy's books, but the movie that they did off of one of his books, I watched that and I was like, yeah, this guy's dragging around the body of the God that he wished didn't exist. And he can't even write this without having the Catholic Church in here because he hates the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
so
there's
much.
there's a scene where they enter a cathedral,
Well, there's a scene where they
There's icons.
destroy an Orthodox chapel.
a bear destroys it,
Well, yeah,
right?
yeah,
A talking bear.
yeah. So it's
Talking
like
about- okay.
it's pretty crazy, but
And
Yeah.
that's what I mean when I'm saying like that's our new. That's what we have now.
yeah, he said something to the effect of Tolkien, that whoever wrote that series said something to the effect of Tolkien doesn't really understand how to write strong female characters, and I was like,
Hmm.
are you insane? Have you ever read anything Tolkien wrote? Like,
Yeah.
that's all he does.
Honestly, yeah. There's you can't escape it. It's everywhere. Then there's a giant poem about them, and a song is getting sung about it. Yeah. Yeah. Tolkien likes the ladies.
Yeah, he writes them really well, in all honesty, and like, you know, not to crap too much on your favorite character. Or I don't know if Turin is your favorite character, but not to be too unkind to him. But one of the things that makes him such a controversial character is he doesn't know how to treat women, at least
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah,
'Cause, like,
but he was
who's the
literally
elf?
cursed.
True, he was literally cursed by Satan.
Isaac
I feel like-
likes him a lot. He's like, yeah, but
No, like I'm not disagreeing with
I
that.
like- I don't-
every female interaction that he has, he screws up badly.
Okay, the big one wasn't even his fault. That one was not.
No, that's fair. I mean, he was going eye to eye with the dragon, but like if his hubris hadn't, like if he hadn't been so motivated to try to kill Glaurung then and there, then Dwelis would never have been killed.
Yeah, well, yeah, right.
You know, if he had. And I mean, to be fair, some of the blame does lie on Morwen because she should have listened to Thingol and Melian and
Yes.
come to Doriath when they
Right,
said, "Hey,
right.
we can get you there, but you need to leave now."
Yeah, yeah,
are you guys like speaking a different language?
probably.
Yes and no.
Okay, cool.
But
So go ahead, because then I want to get into real quick how Nathan found Tolkien. And
yeah, let's get into that. Let's get into that.
hope Nathan, how did you find Tolkien?
So,
And please keep it short, dude.
hi, Ian. My name is Nate. That ain't gonna happen. No, I'll try to be brief. But no, I came across Tolkien for the first time when I was roughly the same age you were. I think, Isaac. I was 7 or 8, and I lived in Denver at the time, and one of my cousins brought over this graphic novel called The Hobbit, and it was the one that David Wenzel illustrated. And so, for whatever reason, he left it at our house, and so my brother and I read through it quite often, you know, a couple of times a month, and or at least screwed around with it. And when we left Colorado, we ended up with that book. And so, you know, several years pass, and then I remember this distinctly, like it was freaking yesterday. My mom had taken my brother and sister and I down to one of the towns that was a little bit further south of us to run some errands, and so we had stopped at a Burger King to get lunch. And that was right when the Fellowship of the Ring was coming out. You know, so there's all these huge signs everywhere, like, "Oh, the Fellowship of the Ring released on whatever day," or "Lord of the Rings released on whatever day." And I'm like, I've been seeing these signs. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, this is the weirdest thing. Like, because you know what the signs I'm talking about look like. You know, it's the backdrop of the Fellowship walking along a ridge, and they're just silhouettes. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
this is weird. Like, what is this? And you know, all the cups, all the Burger King and McDonald's cups have this logos on them and stuff like that. I'm like, what the heck is this? And my mom says, "Oh, this is Tolkien. We've got to go see this when it comes out." And I'm like, who the heck is Tolkien? And I remember when we went to see it a couple of days later, they run the intro and it's like talking about the oh hell's bells, what's that called? They're showing the intro, and they get to the part where it's like, oh yeah, and the ring abandoned Gollum, and it was found by the most unlikely creature imaginable, a hobbit, Bilbo Baggins from the Shire. And I was like, I know who that is. And so after we saw that, there was a guy at church that had the Lord of the Rings books, and he was like, oh, do you want to read them? And I'm like 10 or 11 at this point. It's like, heck yeah. So I read the entire Lord of the Rings series in 3 weeks. Like,
3
I'm sure
weeks?
my mom, yeah.
Oh
My mom was very angry with me the entire time because I was homeschooled. And like every 45-second window, I had to have that book open and read it. I had it open. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go get a drink of water, and so you guys can just hang out for a minute. I'm like pulling the book out and reading a paragraph. And ever since then, my brother and sister and I have been really into Lord of the Rings, and much to the chagrin of my parents, I think one of my, I think it was my aunt on my mom's side, got my brother and I for Christmas one year the entire audio set, the one that Rob Inglis narrates. And we listened to that, I don't know, probably, I don't know, I think I was 12 when we got that. And my brother and I probably listened to it in the intervening 5 or 6 years, like 75 times, if not more. And it wasn't like we would stop when we got to the end of Return of the King. We would go all the way through the appendices because we liked it so much. I mean, my brother and I are still freaking nerds about that. But I mean, it's pretty crazy. But I kept it brief, Ian. How did you find Lord of the Rings?
I mean, kind of, I would say the way most secular kids do.
The movies?
Yeah, the movies. I had no idea. And it's weird because I'm a first generation American. My family's English. My mother was a bank teller in England, and she was Roald Dahl's bank teller. And it's like, I feel like I
should have encountered it differently.
Yeah, I feel like I was robbed
Yeah.
in a weird way, but not putting the blame on my mother. Maybe it just is what it is. But yeah, I found Tolkien through the movies. I don't know. I saw Lord of the Rings. When did it come out?
2001.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen all the movies multiple times. I've skimmed through The Hobbit. I haven't fully read it, as I'm ashamed to say, but I've acquired quite a few Tolkien books, and I've been adding it to my rotation. And I'm hoping and praying that I can, dive deeper into it, because there's so much in it that I didn't know existed. And I think that's kind of a topic we can get into is, that you can look at it on a superficial level, or you can, look at it from a spiritual standpoint. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is kind of bridging that gap between it just being a movie, and some people just separate Tolkien from Lord of the Rings movie, if that makes sense. They don't even know that there's these novellas that he's written. And we did a podcast on Farmer Giles of Ham, and that was kind of my first big introduction from Nathan into Tolkien. And I realized, like, wow,
that is such a good short story too.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
For me, that kind of just made me realize, like, it's you don't have to just think about the movies. There's way more than that. And I was telling Nathan, and I'm sure he disagrees with this still, but I think it'd be epic if some of those stories were made into movies, but obviously not done by like the same people who did The Green Knight. Because
that was such a. Have you seen that yet, Isaac?
No. Is there a movie?
Oh,
there's a movie with the title.
Sir Gawain in The Green Knight.
Yeah, there's a movie with the title The Green Knight that's supposed to follow that, and it's.
But that's what I mean, is like
such a bad movie.
If we could have these stories told now, or these films made now, of Tolkien stories that haven't been made into movies, I hope that they would be done the right way. And I don't see that happening. So yeah, I'm still new to Tolkien. I understand it. I appreciate it. It's life-changing. There's nothing like it. And I'm really excited to dig into stuff more. And that'll obviously spark more conversations between all of us. And I'm sure that, I'll have a different perspective, in a few months. But with that being said, I guess we can kind of get into some of the questions I have, more specifically for you two on, I kind of guess we already touched on a little bit, but how is Tolkien Christian, and why do so many, especially in the Orthodox Church, it seems like there's so many members of clergy who love Tolkien. I mean, we have Father Andrew Damick, who has the Amansul podcast, and it's like there's like this weird like bridge that's built between Orthodoxy and obviously Catholicism and Tolkien. And why is that for people who aren't familiar with Tolkien or Christianity or Orthodoxy? What is it that is so magical and divine about Tolkien that we can also experience, especially as we enter the Orthodox Church? I know that a lot of people might feel the same way. It's when you enter the Orthodox Church, it can be, there's either two ways that you think of it: is wow, this is amazing, or wow, this is too much. It's like there's this weird area where you can't quite figure out how you feel until you go home and digest it. And I think for me personally, it has created this sense of magic that I was longing for and that we see in Tolkien stories. And it's like Orthodoxy, for lack of better terms, is living a story. We're immersed in this magical and divine realm, which is what we expect in our mind. And it's an escape from, I don't want to say an escape from reality, but that's the best I have. When, especially like when you go down to the monastery,
right?
When you come back from the monastery, it's like,
by the monastery, Ian means St. Anthony's in Arizona. If you refer to the monastery, that's the one.
And it's, you go there even for a day, and you come back and you have to go to work, and it's like, okay, this isn't what I want to be doing. But
well, you almost feel like when you've left the monastery, and I think even this may be true as well of Tolkien, when you leave the monastery, like the drive back home, especially if you live further away, like in Tucson or Prescott or Flagstaff, you feel like you're leaving a liminal space almost. Maybe that's not the best way of putting it, but you're leaving something that feels otherworldly, and you're having to come back down. Like you're descending back down into the mundane world.
It also feels like you're leaving home. You're leaving home to go home.
Right.
And it's a very weird feeling.
Right. And it
you're like, I'm leaving my home to go to my house. You're not going home,
Well, and when you read Tolkien, I think you have a similar experience. Definitely not the same, but similar in that you feel like you're leaving something that is touching reality in a way, or touching the mundane world in a way that's better. Because like one of, even though they kind of modified it a little bit in the films, I think they caught the idea pretty well, even though it's different from the text. But Boromir's death in the end of the Fellowship of the Ring and the beginning of the Two Towers in the books, right? Like, in many ways, that to me is, if you were to ask someone, what is repentance? That is like, when people say, I don't understand why penance is a thing. And it's like, watch this or read this. This is why. Because you're going to die at some point, and you bloody well better die having turned your face to the light, even if that means you suffer, and maybe that's a very trite way of looking at it, but
I think that's a very orthodox way of looking at it.
But
what do you think, Isaac?
What do you think? Why would you say Tolkien is Christian, or what have you been able to see between Tolkien and your journey to Orthodoxy? Is there any similarities, or is there anything that has helped you along the way that you've brought from being a Tolkien nerd?
Well, I became a Tolkien nerd before I became a Christian, really.
Yeah.
I became a Tolkien nerd before I took the faith seriously at all. And honestly, I think being a Tolkien nerd, but more so appreciating and seeing the beauty of Tolkien aided me in understanding concepts that were difficult to grasp about Christianity and
Like liturgical life.
Yeah, but also kind of maybe very macro things, right? So the thing that I always think about, and I'm like, this is Tolkien explicitly writing about what the Christian journey is and kind of what our, I don't know if I want to say sad state of things are when it comes to living on Earth, but his his idea in the works of the elves and Valinor, and there's this paradise that's what was made for us. That's where we belong. We're supposed to end up there. Yet we are sojourners in a completely different world that after a time we realize this isn't actually where we belong.
So very much like Legolas's when he hears the sea for the first time, when he hears the gulls.
Yeah. Or you think there's this recurring theme of the elves in Beleriand, right? And they're like, eventually, after all the crazy things that happen and the wars with Morgoth, and they realize this is just a losing game. All we can do, we can advance a little bit and create a great city and create a great civilization, and it's always going to fail. And you think, damn, it must be tough to be an elf because you live forever, right? And you see all these beautiful things you've made, and it all crumbles. It all becomes nothing. And you know that this impending doom is. This is not. You get the sense this is not the end game. This is not where we belong wholly, right? And you see that even with Galadriel, right? And she's been outcast from Valinor for ages, literally, and then she finally,
right.
It's
not until she sees Frodo,
right,
that
and
she
resists,
finally overcomes
right.
her passions. Yeah.
But you think, and I always wondered too, and there's a bit, I don't remember what the direct quote is in the books, because now it's been a long time since I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but in the movie, Sam and Frodo come across the elves leaving, right? They see a convoy of elves leaving, and Sam says something like, I don't know why, but it makes me sad to look at them. And you do get that sense of like, I don't know if they're sad, but it's a very somber feeling. And I remember when I was a kid watching it too, I was like, yeah, that does make me sad. Like,
Right.
why? And I always would ask my dad, why are they leaving? Why are they sad? Like, why are they staying and fighting? And like, what do you mean this isn't their home, or they don't belong here, or the age of the elf is over? Like, what does this mean? But as you progress in your Christian life, and I didn't find this in Protestantism, but certainly found it in Orthodoxy, this idea that we are just sojourners, that sometimes perhaps, and to not in a way that makes you despair, but you do feel this feeling of, man, I'm just kind of tired of this.
Right.
I don't, you literally, spiritually, and maybe even to a physical degree, you long to go home.
Right.
And that home is paradise, that our Valinor, if you will, you know what I mean? And you see the futility of the works of men and the great civilizations we can build, and the money we can acquire, the status we can acquire. Because
but we see how fast that can crumble.
Yeah, it'll always crumble.
Always.
It will always crumble.
Well, it's interesting
we
that
don't belong here. We do, but we don't, right? Like what we were intended for was that paradise, that nature in which Adam and Eve existed before the fall. That is what we're intended for.
We are not of this world. We're meant to be in direct communion with the Creator.
Right, and that is a prevailing theme throughout this, from the Silmarillion all the way to Frodo leaving Middle Earth. That is a theme about there's a place that we belong and it's not here.
Well, and it's part of it too, and I think Frodo leaving Middle Earth and going to Valinor touches on this pretty well, actually, is the notion that the world doesn't contain the cure for our ills. Because that's one of the things that people don't often recognize, is that Sam actually, because like, you read further on in the appendices, I think it's Appendix A, but Sam, after Rosie dies, after his wife dies, he goes to Valinor because he was a ring bearer, and because of that, he has been, I mean, obviously not in the way that Frodo was, but because he carried a ring of power, he has a sickness, or at least he's wounded in a way that can't be fixed in the world, and before he dies, he needs to receive treatment for it.
Yeah, and I mean that's explicit. I mean, that's explicit as it gets. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's crazy. It's interesting that you talk about this notion of not quite a longing for death in the Orthodox faith, but this view that death is, well, it is an enemy, it is a gateway
To home.
home, yeah, to reconciliation with God, because that's an interesting thing. One of the phrases that I often say to people after, Ian always gives me crap for this, but someone would be like, "Oh, Nate, how are you?" And I'll say, "Oh, well, glory to God, I'm not dead yet." And a lot of people read that and like, "Oh, haha, Nate, you're just being funny." And in many ways, I'm not. I'm actually kind of serious. It's like the longer I've been Orthodox, the less afraid I am of dying. And I mean, to the extent that nowadays, the mechanism obviously is somewhat disconcerting. It's like, yeah, if you get, there's a number of ways you could die that would be disagreeable. I'll put it that way. But the prospect of death itself doesn't really frighten me anymore. And it's
No, I think it's explained in the Silmarillion, or maybe Christopher Tolkien comments on it, but I believe that death.
I hear your cat.
Tapping at me.
I know that noise all too well.
Yep. I don't know if she needs. I thought she was content, but
she's a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
She just loves Tolkien. She wants to be in on the
Dude, we have a little kitten. Sorry to interject, but she's like, we got carpet at this new apartment, and I guess they think carpets are litter boxes.
Oh no.
So I'm currently dealing with that. But also Nate knows how to skin a cat, so
I know how to skin a lot of things.
There's always a backup option.
You can have furry feet yet, Isaac.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Slippers.
That is not a package you want to receive.
Graft some cat fur on my feet. Yeah.
But the notion of death, as far as Orthodox Christians, I mean, generally speaking, it's not something to fear. I mean, it's a hell of a thing. It's scary, but it's weird. It's scary, but it's not something you fear, because we know that you can't have life without death and death without life, and that this cycle hopefully ends with us, at the gates of heaven.
Right. I think it's touched on. I don't know if it's explicitly stated, but the elves view death as it's a gift bestowed upon man.
Well, there's the dialogue. What is it? The Atherobath, which is the discussion between Finrod and what's her name? She's like one of the Andreth.
I was going to say Wonder Woman.
They're talking about the whole notion of, and it's been a long time since I've read it, so I'm not going to comment on what the conclusion is because I don't recall. But they're having this discussion, and Andreth is like, yeah, we as humans are kind of jealous that you elves are immortal. And Finrod's like, well, we last as long as creation lasts, or as long as the world lasts. But when Arda goes away, we don't know what happens to us. We're bound to the world. You guys go beyond the walls of the world, and we think that's a good thing. And Andreth is kind of upset about that. But there's that whole dialogue.
That's a hard thing to think of, I think, if you're not Christian. And I think maybe if you're not
Orthodox
Christian.
I know I kind of hate saying that sometimes, but it's like, and not to bash on our Protestant brothers and sisters, because a lot of them are very devout and, sometimes I would say more pious than I could be, but there's like this live, laugh, love Jesus notion, it's like let's talk about some of the real stuff.
Well, that's where Tolkien's notion of eucatastrophe plays.
Yeah.
Have you read the essay on fairy stories?
No, but I've seen bits of it.
Dude, there's some stuff we've talked about.
I might have
yeah
graphic about that one, but
in on fairy stories, Tolkien basically says eucatastrophe is the best example of that has ever occurred and ever will occur, is the incarnation and the death of Christ and the resurrection. And actually that came up in a recent Pajot interview. I forget who he was talking to. He's either an atheist or an agnostic, I don't remember. But Pajot basically said, yeah, every great story in some ways retells the incarnation or talks about the fall of man. Like that's what every great story does. That's what King Arthur is, right?
Right.
And this guy was kind of upset about that. I mean, he wasn't mad, but he was very disturbed because, but why would I tell a story that's already been told? And it's like, why wouldn't you? Novel storytelling is not the pinnacle of that art. In many ways, that's where you start. And then once you've actually understood, at least to the best that you can, what the themes are that every story ought to contain, then you retell those themes. You know, you don't have to do the Chronicles of Narnia 2.0, but you know, you read like Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain series, right? That tracks very closely with a lot of Tolkien and Lewis stuff, but you also have to recognize that he's also kind of fairly overtly plagiarizing a lot of Welsh myths and making them Christian. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a phenomenal story. I read it once every couple of years, you know, because it's really, really good.
Well, I guess that kind of leads us into our next topic. How, trying to think of how to word this, but how can we, you know, to quote Pajot, how can we re-enchant the world? And what is our duty as Orthodox Christians or Christians in general to bring a sense of beauty back into the world? And I know Isaac, you do something that I look forward to every week, and I'm sure a lot of people do. And I know you know what I'm talking about. The beauty posting Friday, man. Although, see, here's the thing: it's like it's not orthodox. You know, I mean, some of it is,
Right.
but it's beauty.
Well, beauty is necessarily Orthodox.
Well, yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. Like with Tolkien, people are like, "Oh, well, it's not Christian." It's like, well, if you're just skimming the surface, yeah. But
Right.
yeah, if you guys don't follow Isaac on Instagram, it's the Traditionalist Project on there, or is it just Traditionalist?
Handle is no, yeah, it's just Traditionalist Project.
Traditionalist Project on Instagram every Friday, sometimes Saturday if you know, life gets in the way.
If Nashville gets in the way.
Yeah. But he does this posting where, you know, he'll blow up your Instagram story feed with all this beauty. And I think it's really important for people to see. And I hope that more people, you know, I know this YouTube channel specifically is growing. Our Instagram is crushing it as far as Orthodox logos, but the YouTube is a whole nother avenue. And that's like a whole different realm of trying to get, you know, the message out. But yeah, if you guys aren't following him, make sure to follow that. And I love it, man. I think it's something that a lot of people, you know, don't think about. We tend to get online and scroll or post what we want to post. But what you're doing is you're bringing a sense of beauty back into. It's weird because it's like you go online to like escape things. But whenever you post those things, it's like taking me to a different time period. It's something that I really look forward to.
It's one of the things.
Yeah.
Have you ever, this might be a slight deviation, but we talked about poetry a little bit ago. Do you know who Lorena McKennitt is?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Dude.
If you show me a couple, I'd probably have known some, but I'm terrible when it comes to authors of poetry.
So she's actually not an author. She's a musician. She's a Canadian musician. Her first album was recorded in a barn, and it sounds awesome. But she puts a lot of famous poems to music, right? And it's very, I want to say it's folksy, but it's not quite that. It's just kind of, I won't try to explain the quality of the music. That's beyond any ability that I have in language is utterly insufficient to discuss her work. But she does two of her more famous ones, or at least the ones that I think should be more famous. She does a really good rendition of The Highwayman and of The Lady of Shalott. And it's, dude, I mean, definitely not explicitly Christian, but the poems are beautiful, period. But the way she does them is so fantastic.
But I think that brings us back to the point of like Isaac's beauty posting or stories and music that we listen to. It's like it's not quote unquote Christian, but there's an aspect to it, like you said, it's a retelling of a story that is Christian. You know, and it's like we lack that so much nowadays. I mean, I know there's a lot of probably not great stuff in it, but I've heard like this new Batman movie apparently has some deeper meaning to it. I've yet to see it, but a friend of mine who's Orthodox, he told me like, you got to see it. There's a lot more to it. And I'm hoping I'm not disappointed. I'm hoping that maybe there's something that I can pick up from it, because I don't know. I feel like that's one of those stories that can either be completely blasphemous, or there can be something that you walk away and you're like, wow.
Right. Well, man, I almost wonder if the Dune movie has kind of fulfilled that role a little bit. 'Cause I will
Have you
say-
seen Dune, Isaac?
No, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah,
I
I had to
didn't
watch it
see the
three. I
older
had to watch
ones.
it
I
like
didn't-
The older ones are weird, man. One of my friends loves Dune. She has made me watch the old versions a couple of times. I still don't know what Dune is about.
that's what I'm saying. I had to watch it 3 times, and I'm like,
Well, unlike Ian, so I'm too lazy to read the Dune books, but I have read the entire Dune Wikipedia page, and I do not know what Dune is about.
should I just read Tolkien's Wikipedia page?
No.
TolkienGateway.net. Yeah,
Oh, geez.
unofficial plug.
But I will say that the new Dune movie is a very aesthetically pleasing movie, and it's actually kind of good. Like I shouldn't say kind of, it's actually a pretty good movie.
Yeah,
It's hard to understand, but it's shot well, and it's not a perverse film.
Well,
which
that's
is
right.
an impressive thing to do these days.
you can appreciate it from like myself, like a filmmaker, artistic point of view, but you can also appreciate it from a storytelling, Christian point of view. Like the Green Knight that you should listen to the episode. It's actually,
Is it
if you
dropped
guys
yet?
are listening to this, it's live as of 14 minutes ago on YouTube. And it's a 2-hour episode that we did comparing the Arthurian legend and the poem to the film. And it's
Ian
like,
actually thought we could do that in an hour.
well, I thought we could do this in
I
an
thought,
hour
yeah,
too.
yeah. It's never gonna be like that.
But no, yeah, I think I just want to do a quick plug. If you guys want to check that out, if you've seen the movie The Green Knight and you think that's the story,
You're wrong, and you should never watch a movie about an Arthurian myth again, because
Pretty
most of them
much.
are pretty bad. Some of them are good, but most of them are bad.
yeah, there's a lot in that, and I think that's, we'll wrap this up in a little bit. I know we'll get into the quotes, and then maybe we'll probably have to end up doing a part 2. I'm sure, but
I'm
that's the
interested.
thing we see right now in the world and society is like they take this story of beauty and virtue and they turn it into a blasphemous woke film. It's like, when are we gonna take a step back and realize you don't have to be Christian
To tell a good story.
exactly to tell a good story. But I also think as Christians, it's our duty, like I said with you, the beauty posting, it's our duty as Christians to tell beautiful stories and to try and re-enchant the world. And Hollywood has just taken it upon themselves to say, oh, we have an opportunity to show the Virgin Mary, or an icon of the Virgin Mary, which is on Sir Gawain's shield, and smash it. We get 2 scenes, one scene where it's briefly shown and the other scene where it's being smashed. And
It's
it's
not
like
even that it's being smashed, it's being stomped on.
yeah, it's like a blatant, it's like society is
Really?
taking, yeah, it's I love the movie cinematically, but I hate everything else about the movie. So
That's an interesting point, and I think you don't have to be a Christian to tell a good story, but I think you have to be spiritual.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
you have to be touching
Yeah.
something that is beautiful. One of the books
whoa,
I've been
who
working through.
created everything beautiful?
Right.
It brings us back to a connection with our creator. It's like people are so sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
People are so in love with the creation and not the creator. Like I was talking with someone recently about astrology versus astronomy, and it's like, oh well, God created the stars, so we can listen to them and they can decide our fate. And it's like,
The
it's-
stars are in rebellion to God, so
well, there's like heaven, earth, and then the heavens. There's like
Right.
three layers, and God obviously created the stars, but he also gave us free will. And it's like people get lost in this whole worshiping the creation and not the creator. And I think that's really detrimental to our spiritual life.
Right. And yeah, I think you can't be a good storyteller if all you know is the here and now.
Yeah, if you're not in connection with something greater, and
Right.
and hate to sound like a perennialist, but it's like you have to have some sense of spirituality, and hopefully it's not like, I don't know. I was at this used bookstore the other day, and this girl walked by me and she goes, yeah, like the universe. And I was like, I'm gonna vomit right now.
I can hear that being said in the Flagstaff accent.
Yeah, I forget what she was saying, but she was saying, oh yeah, I don't really like do that because the universe told me not to. And I'm like, that's not the type of connection that's going to get you anywhere, you know?
Well, it's going to get you somewhere, but you're not going to be appreciating it when you get there.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like you're in love with the
Well.
creation. The universe was created, but what about the creator? You know? So yeah, sorry, Isaac, but yeah, you don't have to be Christian to tell a good story at all,
Well,
you know?
I would go to Homer. I mean, so this is the only positive thing I will say about the Troy movie, because
Oh,
I
wait, what?
despise,
man.
I hate that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, Brad Pitt is ripped.
Okay, Brad Pitt plays a good Achilles. I'll say that.
He is ripped, dude.
However, one of the things that they achieve in that movie, I think they come close to it anyway. They don't quite get it as well as I wish they would, but there aren't sides, at least not till the very end. And then they kind of make Achilles into the hero, and it's like,
Yeah.
no.
Mm.
But at the same time, it's hard to watch that movie and just be Achilles fanboy or just be Hector's fanboy. The movie does kind of show you, yeah, this is kind of crappy on all sides. But the actual poem, the Iliad, there are no sides. I mean, one of the most irritating parts of that poem, I think, is that Diomedes never dies, and he's just everyone's like, oh yeah, Achilles is like the baddest Greek dude, and it's like, yeah, he's the most powerful one, but if you're looking at who's racking up the body count and who's actually doing stuff, it's Diomedes. Right? And you hate him the entire time he's doing it. But it's not even necessarily because he's successful in the Greek end of things. It's because he's kind of engaging in, he tries on a couple of occasions to engage in theocide. You know, he tries to kill Aphrodite, he tries to kill Apollo. And it's like, I mean, no one's going to criticize your courage, but also not your place.
Yeah, I've yet to read that.
Dude,
I know.
It's a good read.
I mean, I read the
that before Lord of the
Wikipedia.
Rings. Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding.
I'm
But
never
I think
going to
that's
live that down.
I think it's an interesting point. Going back to Ian saying it would be, maybe it would be cool to have some other Tolkien works turn into film.
Even, and I know this.
I wholly disagree with that though, because I don't think where the world is right now. I don't think
it would be done so wrong. I mean,
well,
imagine
not even that, but I don't know if people would get it. Like, I think we're at a point right now where so many people are so disconnected from the spiritual, they're so disconnected from anything other than a vapid, materialistic way of looking at the life or a selfish way of looking at life that they can't zoom out from Earth. They can't zoom out from themselves.
Yeah, well, the first thing they would do is they would cast like a Black Farmer Giles.
Which is fine. I don't care about
if
that.
if it's done right, but not for the sake of wokeness is what I mean.
Well, no, consider this. Here's why Tolkien movies.
I hope people that are listening, I'm not saying like there shouldn't be a Black actor playing in Tolkien. I'm just saying we don't do things for the sense just because it's progressive. It's like,
well, we do, but we shouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, consider this. One of the reasons why it would be really hard for people to make a good movie about some sort of Tolkien short story. So say,
Farmer Giles.
No, we'll go with Leaf by Niggle.
Leaf by Niggle.
Have you read that one before, Isaac?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Oh, well, see, you still have some stuff.
So Leaf by Niggle is really,
but
really
it's
good.
It's not.
But Leaf by Niggle is entirely about.
It's
the entire purpose of that short story is to explain how one approaches death and how one goes through purgatory, like through purgatory into paradise. Like that is the entirety of what that story is about. And I have known a lot of people who have read that and said, yeah, I didn't really understand it. And I'm like, seriously? Like, where do you think this train station is? And they're like, I don't know. The train station's weird. I'm like, the train station's purgatory, man. What the heck? Like,
yeah, but I think that speaks.
Oh, really?
People might not, and not to say they wouldn't understand, but I don't think they would. I don't think they would.
Yeah.
I don't think a society that has killed anything spiritual, a society that has killed anything close to Christ and God could even produce a good movie like that. And from the audience side, they wouldn't appreciate it. That's again, Marvel has been one of the greatest catastrophes for human civilization in the past couple of decades because I think it's just dumbed down everybody.
I mean, it made a kid at my work who's 19 change his name from Bryce to Thor.
Seriously, that's how that happened?
I have nothing charitable to say about that. So
I walked into work and I have Viking
Right. You
by runes. Like, you know,
you got own runes on.
yeah, I have runes on the sides of both my neck. And he goes, oh man, yeah. He's like,
Oh no.
hey, do you practice? I'm like, practice what? And I mean, I knew what he was saying, but it's like, he's like, my name's Thor. I'm like, oh, like maybe that's his actual name. You know, maybe there's some like lineage or something.
So you're named after Thor Heyerdahl, right?
I mean, he's like got Scandinavian in his blood, but any white person could say they're Scandinavian. It's like, but yeah, but exactly. It's like this whole notion of this is what is beautiful and this is what's virtuous and heroic. It's like people are deciding to change their name to Thor. And I asked him why, and it's based off. He was like, "Have you seen that movie?" I'm like, "Oh
no."
Here we go."
My friend Nate
I'm like, "Have you seen the movie?"
Stroke if they heard this conversation.
But no, I think it's deeper than us who might not, you know, who may be critiques of such movies. But I think maybe it's more pervasive. Maybe it's more sinister than that. Maybe people are really being dumbed down and like they try to view the world through a Marvel lens. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but you see some of the, you see how people respond to big events that are happening in the world, right? You see like the Russia-Ukraine thing, COVID thing, doctor thing, healthcare thing, and everything has to be clean cut, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And then the good guy's going to come in and they're going to save the day, and everybody else who doesn't agree with me, bad guy. And then they'll even make like direct references. Oh, this is just like Marvel when they get, oh my goodness. But it's become like, if that is what our epic is, if that's what our canon of literature and storytelling is, we are doomed. We're doomed.
Well, you bring up a good point though, with the idea that they want things to be black and white, which is why, interestingly, you have this notion that people who read Lord of the Rings nowadays and view it through that lens don't understand why, in the books anyway, in the Lord of the Rings books, why why Gandalf doesn't go after Saruman, why Saruman's not killed for a long time, why even Frodo doesn't want to kill Wormtongue, why even on a more superficial level, why so many people in pop culture think that Boromir is a terrible person. It's like Boromir is the greatest character in Lord of the Rings, or one of the greatest ones. Like he sins mightily, but he repents mightily. He repents with his blood. Right? Like,
or even such, like a lot of people, when I introduce them that I've never even heard of Lord of the Rings, never watched it, don't know anything about it, they observe Frodo and they're like, oh, he's the worst. He says, I hate Frodo. He's this, that. And I'm like, he's literally carrying like such a
he's carrying a demon around his neck.
Like, what do you
Well, he has a cross to bear,
right.
Going back to what today is. Today it's the, the commemoration of the Venerable Cross. And it's like, he has a cross to bear and he bears it, but he also, you see him struggling with it when he, just like from the movie standpoint, when he looks at the ring and he knows the power that it holds, or the passions and the temptations that he could fall into. But, he does a pretty good job at bearing that cross and doing what God intends for him to do.
Right. And again, I think, Boromir is probably, if there was any reflection of our state and who we are, it probably is Boromir. But I think you can make a good case that it's Frodo as well, because Frodo doesn't cast the ring it's not really him. He carries it, but he always is going to fail. Right? He's always going to fail. And a power outside of him has to do away with it. And is that not us? Are we not always carrying this cross? Are we not always failing? And we can't defeat it. No, I can't defeat my sin.
Christ has defeated. Christ has defeated it for us. He has trampled death by death, but we are so disconnected from that we can see ourselves in Frodo.
Right, and think we know exactly what the evil is. We know exactly what needs to be done with this evil, and we know what happens if we don't.
We know what happens if we put that ring on.
Again and again and again and again.
And we do every day.
I will go to liturgy and repent for 2 hours straight, and then within 30 minutes of leaving my parish, I sin. You know what I mean? Yeah. Is that not Frodo?
Right.
So it always gets me upset when people, they just want to write him off. Well, he's the worst. Sam's actually the best. This guy's carrying. If you could condense all your evil into a ring and carry it, you think you would not,
Do you think you can make it half as far?
Right.
Yeah, you try to walk around barefoot on the mountain.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
well, no, I mean,
The worst trial.
that's a really good point, because let's be fair for a moment.
He's suffering in all aspects.
Outside of Sauron, you have, let me think, you have Isildur, you have Gollum, Bilbo, and Frodo. You have 4 ring bearers. Well, 5, counting Sam, right? You have 5 ring bearers. 2 of them manage to carry it towards destruction. Only 2. And Sam only has it for like a couple of hours. And that still does such irreparable hurt to him that he has to live and see his wife die. Right? And even living the full life that he lives, he still requires healing that he can't find in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Frodo carried it for a year, or not a year. He carried it, so he got it when he was 33, and when he was 51 was when he destroyed it. So he carries it for 18 bloody years. Really gonna say that he's a terrible character? That he's a terrible character and sucks?
Knowingly carrying it.
Right. Yeah, he knows what it is.
Some of us walk around not knowing the cross that we're carrying, or the cross that we need to carry. We just like walk around aimlessly. It's like he knows.
Well, we do what Gollum did. We sit there in a cave and just sit there and love our sins so much we can't bear to be parted from it.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about orthodoxy? That was something that really struck me when I was looking into orthodoxy. And you know what's interesting? I was actually going through my phone to do beauty posting, and I was like, I'm just gonna doom scroll way back to years old photos. And before I was Orthodox, right? So I was deep Protestant, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna become Catholic, then go Orthodox, right? So when I was in my Catholic phase, I would save a bunch of quotes from saints I had found, because saints weren't a thing to me when I was Protestant. Right. Strangely enough, the majority of quotes that I found while I was becoming a Catholic, Orthodox, 90% of them, and I had no idea
without knowing,
without knowing, they were Orthodox. And you know what struck me, and what really pulled me into Orthodoxy to make me inquire? I was like, these men appear to be suffering. They are constantly asking for mercy. They are weeping. This doesn't look fun. This doesn't look joyful, but yet I don't think any of them would tell me they don't have eternal joy residing in them. Right. And that struck me because I struggled with nihilism and depression, and getting to the point of harming myself and suicidal ideations, all these things, right? And it's so strange how God works and how it makes it all come together. But like, in a sense, I felt like because I had despaired, when I saw these monks and when I saw them on the ground, when I saw them weeping for their sins, when I saw them realizing truly that this is hopeless without the mercy of Christ, I can't do this, and it made sense to me. Not because I want to be like, oh, now I can despair, but with reason, now I can be depressed. I can be depressed, but not sin. No, but I was like, it's interesting how God takes you that journey of, your sin and it's killing you.
Right.
Like you cannot win. You can't. And
it's the story of Saint Mary of Egypt in many ways. It's realizing how much you've sinned and then saying, okay, well, it's time to go out and wrestle with this monster,
But I think that's a tough thing for non-Orthodox people to understand. If I were to bring my old Protestant pastor into liturgy, I think one of the things he would say is, why do you guys keep asking for mercy over and over and over and over? Isn't it
you
done?
Think one time really suffices?
Aren't you saved? Like, why do you got to keep asking? Like, to them, that's like asking Jesus into your
heart. Doesn't your Instagram bio say saved?
Lol.
Saved on. What's the date?
Oh man.
No, but you're right. It's like we're constantly asking, and we see that with the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on us, or have mercy on me.
When I want to say it was Saint Paisios said something to the effect of,
and mercy is like what a parent gives a child. It's like, if that makes sense, like when you mess up and your dad forgives you,
right?
But and your father knows it's not the last time that you're going to be messing up. It's a constant thing.
Well, I've had interesting conversations too with Protestant friends and family, where I'll on occasion bring up something, and it's like, I'm really sorry that X, Y, or Z thing happened. And I'm like, well, I've already forgiven you. It's like, yeah, but that passion's not dead in me yet. Like, I still do those things. I still have why you have forgiven me for it. X, Y, or Z event or offense. Glory to God for that. Thank you for forgiving me. But that passion is still very much alive and kicking, unfortunately. And for that reason, I still require forgiveness and mercy for it. And maybe that's reading a bit more into it than I ought, but it's a hard thing to explain to people who aren't Orthodox. Like, why is it that you still grieve over your sins? And it's like, because I sinned.
Yeah.
But also because it's still alive. That coal still burns, and I know it. That is one of the strangest things about Orthodoxy is you can carry around a prayer rope and ask for mercy all day long, and you're still gonna sin.
Oh,
while you're doing it.
Oh yeah,
exactly. And we
exactly.
know it's going to happen. Like what? That's why I was actually having a conversation with a follower just this week about how God as an author has written the most beautiful tragedy of all time. I mean, you want to talk about like a tragic tale. This tale of mankind is tragic, especially tragic for those who don't know, right? But maybe even more tragic for those who do know.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly, like with Frodo with the ring.
Yeah.
Again, it's like
Yeah.
he knows.
What's the quote? When Sam says, we're gonna, why can't you stay in the Shire? And he says, we went through all this trouble, or you went through all this trouble to save it, which is interesting because Sam and Marion, Pippin, and everybody else, they went through quite literally hell and high water to save the Shire. And Frodo says, it has been saved, but not for me.
Yeah.
That's oh man, there's so many good quotes that relate to just an Orthodox view of the world.
Well, why don't we I don't want to rush things, but we could probably do a part 2. Why don't we wrap it up for today with some quotes? And I don't know if Isaac, if you have one. Nathan wants me to read one, but I honestly probably won't because I'll probably say the names wrong.
You'll be fine, bro.
I don't know. I really don't want to embarrass myself. But Isaac, do you have a favorite quote?
I don't have a specific favorite quote, but I have ones that I think cause pause, a pause that is necessary. And one of the ones is from Morgoth's Ring, which is largely just Christopher Tolkien, but expanding on the works of his father. And one of the quotes, and I'm not really going to get into the backstory, but there's a matter being disputed, and it kind of touches upon healing from wounds and justice and ideas of healing. And the quote is, "Healing cometh only by suffering and patience, and maketh no demand, not even for justice." And I think that is quite an orthodox statement. Right. When we think about forgiveness, not explicitly orthodox. These themes exist also. I found them in Catholicism, and specifically the works. Which comes to mind is The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. But healing is much more than just forgiving, and healing is much more than forgetting. And healing is, I hate the idea, it's this notion that time heals all things. It's completely false. There's completely, time doesn't heal anything. Sitting there and assuming that time will just make you forget, it might not be on your mind, but it lives in your soul, Right.
Well, you might not remember it ever. But
right. It still
indelibly has marked your soul.
So this is interesting though. To heal, you can only heal through suffering and patience. But suffering seems like the complete opposite of healing. But healing is a painful process, an extremely, extremely painful process. I mean, if you try to recall in your mind something egregious an egregious offense that someone has done to you, like just completely just shattering, and trying to heal from that hurts way more. You will suffer a lot more than trying to get revenge or be vindictive. I mean, I've had a series of instances that kind of happened back to back to back, and it just destroyed me. And it wasn't till I took the faith seriously and realized that healing isn't getting back at anybody. Healing isn't even me getting the last word in. Healing isn't me going back for, let's clear this up. Healing is me
going
through it, but suffering through it fruitfully. You don't just sit there and wallow. You know, just
Well,
saying, "Oh,
everything that God puts in our path is for our salvation.
right, right." But
Right.
this is, I mean, this is an interesting.
And it's
concept.
hard to think about that
Yeah,
in general. Like, I mean, even just throughout the day when something happens and you sit there and you suffer, but you're not suffering in a way that is I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not doing any benefit for you.
You-
It's like
you can-
self wallow.
You can damn
Mm.
yourself through your suffering.
Yeah.
If
oh,
you are
100%.
Exactly.
If-
You don't see the salvation in your suffering.
Mm.
You're just suffering to suffer.
Mhm.
well, it's
And what's interesting here, I'll just mention at the tail end, also is, you make no demand of justice, right? I think a lot of times
that's
we think,
so hard to do.
a wrong has been done to me. There's just like now
Yeah.
justice would be them getting what the rightful
An eye for an eye.
conviction is that right, and to completely abandon that is so difficult, especially if you've been wronged for maybe no reason, and maybe the person who wronged you, it was purely malicious, and you're like, this is an injustice.
Right.
You know,
Well,
what is
that's
the
what-
due punishment?
That's when you
To
say,
abandon that is virtue. That's got to be close to the height of virtue, is to relinquish any want of judgment or getting even with those who have done us wrong.
well, that's when you
That's the beauty
say,
of forgiveness.
you know, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on whoever has committed the wrong to you and forgive me, a sinner.
Well, there was. Do you guys remember that story a couple of years ago that there was that woman who was a cop? I'm wanting to say she was either in Texas or Tennessee. I don't remember precisely where, but she thought she was going into her apartment, or that's
Yeah,
what
I
she
remember
said.
this.
And there was a dude. His name was Botham Jean, I think. And she went into this guy's apartment. It was like the same. It was like quite literally right below hers. So I mean, her story is somewhat plausible. But she walked into this dude's apartment, freaked out because there was somebody in the apartment who happens to live there. And she, had just gotten off duty, so she pulled her sidearm and killed him.
And probably, like, I'm not saying there was anything justifiable about this, but I've walked into, when I used to live here in Flagstaff at a kind of like a dorm area, I've actually walked into the wrong house and noticed that the TV in there was 3 times bigger than the TV I had. And it was after a long day. I'm not saying it was justifiable, but she had a long day, walked into the home.
Right.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's a shock when you're not expecting something like that. It's a shock. But either way, she killed this guy quite unjustly.
Yeah.
Right. And in the trial, and I can't remember what this dude's brother's name was, but he, she got found guilty of whatever. I forget what it was, but she was found guilty of a negligent homicide or something like that. And this guy's brother stood up and said, I forgive you. I knew Botham really well. I know he forgives you. And I'm sorry that you have to go to prison. Like it's a tearjerker of a speech. And he just says, I'm sorry that this is happening to you, but this isn't the end of everything. You find forgiveness. I forgive you. No one in my family holds this against you. We've all forgiven you. And you need to now learn how to forgive yourself. And it's like, I mean, you want to talk about being Christ's hands and feet to somebody. Like this guy, I highly doubt that he's Orthodox, just because very few people in the US are. But you want to talk about someone who's living out the Orthodox faith and who is serving God in everything that they do.
Yeah, forgiving someone
This
who
guy-
killed your brother unjustly.
Yeah, this guy, 110%. I can't remember his name, but I encourage anyone who's listening to look up that. If you know the story that I'm talking about, look up this guy's brother's speech. It's fantastic, and it's the epitome of what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah, he didn't wish death upon her.
No, he didn't say anything spiteful to her at
Yeah.
all. I mean, I don't speak that kindly to people that I hold nothing against.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great quote, Isaac. And Nathan, I know you have a quote.
I have 9 kinds of quotes, but the one I'm going
You're
to
gonna read one quote, Nathan.
the one I'm going to go to, I think.
I've had to pee for like the last 30 minutes.
I'll keep it brief. It's in. Let's see if I can find the right one. It's actually I won't do the one I was going to initially. I'll do a different one. It happens towards the end of Return of the King, when Aragorn has.
Do you guys mind if I use the restroom?
Huh.
And
We'll do
you
it.
guys, you can do the quote. I really have to use the restroom.
Agni parthene despina achrante Theotoke
We're back, and Nathan is going to read his quote from Tolkien. We're going to talk about it for a minute and then wrap this thing up. Isaac, thank you again for being here. We appreciate you, and I'm sure, like I've said many times, this won't be the last one we do together.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. When I saw you guys reach out and said we're gonna talk about Tolkien, I was like, "Yep, I'm in." Yep,
That
that's
wasn't-
literally all you had to say.
That wasn't me that reached
I
out.
believe your response was something to the effect of, "Well, I'm contractually obliged."
Yeah.
Now that you said we're going to talk about Tolkien.
Yeah, yeah. So no,
Um,
honestly, thank you so much for bringing me on.
Totally.
No, for sure, man. So this is in the section or the chapter, "The Houses of Healing in Return of the King." And it happens when Aragorn is tending to Eowyn and Faramir and Merry. So
Make sure I know you, whenever you read, Nathan, you get quiet. So just try to keep, he'll like start reading and then get really quiet.
apparently I speak quietly. I didn't know that until this whole thing started.
You do.
So it proceeds thusly. Then Aragorn laid his hand on Merry's head, and passing his hand gently through the brown curls, he touched the eyelids and called him by name. And when the fragrance of Atherobath stole through the room, like the scent of orchards and of heather in the sunshine full of bees, suddenly Merry awoke, and he said, "I'm hungry. What's the time?" "Past supper time now," said Pippin, "though I dare say I could bring you something if they will let me." "They will indeed," said Gandalf, "and anything else that this rider of Rohan may desire, if it can be found in Minas Tirith, where his name is in honor." "Good," said Merry. Then I would like supper first, and after that a pipe." At that his face clouded. "No, not a pipe. I don't think I'll ever smoke again." "Why not?" said Pippin. "Well," answered Merry slowly, "he is dead. It has brought it all back to me. He said he was sorry he never had a chance of talking herb lore with me. Almost the last thing he ever said. I shan't ever be able to smoke again without thinking of him." And that day, Pippin, when he rode up to Isengard, was so polite. "Smoke then, and think of him," said Aragorn. "For he was a gentle heart and a great king, and he kept his oaths, and he rose out of the shadows to a last fair morning. Though your service to him was brief, it should be a memory glad and honorable to the end of your days." Merry smiled. "Well then," he said, "if Strider will provide what is needed, I will smoke and think. I had some of Saruman's best in my pack, but what became of it in battle, I am sure I do not know." And that's, for anyone who doesn't know, because you've not read this book, that's a reference. The he in that entire dialogue is Theoden, and it kind of ties in, I think, to what we were talking about with healing and forgiveness, and this whole notion that just because you suffer something unpleasant, or in this case, exceedingly traumatic and horrifying, doesn't mean that you ought to try to blot out the memory. That's one of the problems with addiction these days, right? People smoke or drink or even work out, right, to try to blot out the memory of particular things, or to try to cope with particular things. And that is, I can understand that motivation better than maybe some people might accuse me of recognizing. But a traumatic thing ought to be dwelt upon a little bit, because, like you said, Isaac, these things leave an indelible mark on your soul, and you can't just pretend they didn't happen. You have to consider them, and especially when something was horrifying, you need to consider it and wrestle through it and see, and not do it alone. Do it in community. That's one of the great things about smoking, right? It's smoking a pipe is in many ways a long-term communal activity, depending on how you pursue it.
Also, not doing something because it reminds you of someone.
Right.
It's like that. I've been through that. I've lost a lot of people in pretty
Horrible ways.
And I had to deal with the fact that, like, doing this reminds me of them. And at the time, the things that I was doing that reminded me of them weren't good. But I can say now, and Lord willing, if I lost someone, like if I lost Nathan, or, you know, someone I care about. I love you. No, someone that I care about. It's like I wouldn't look at it as if this reminds me of them, I can't do it. What type of, that's a disservice to the memory of someone. You know, it's like, do that thing and remember them while you do it.
Well, within the Orthodox faith, that's what hagiographies are
Yeah.
in many ways. I mean, it's easy to read the life of, say, oh, I don't know, Saint Justin the philosopher, right? And go, oh man, that's terrible that happened to him. But he's removed from us by 1700 years, right? It's easy for us to then say, you know, to look at that and say, yeah, well, that was a traumatic event, but you know, whatever. It's not that bad, but we still remember it because he's an awesome saint. He intercedes for us in heaven. But when that comes closer to home, it's a lot harder to deal with. But that doesn't mean the hagiographies aren't necessary. You know, when the monk who founded St. Anthony's is Elder Ephraim, right? He was the of blessed memory. He reposed 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I believe it's a shade over 2 years
2019.
ago. Yeah, like it was December 2019. I think.
17 monasteries in the United States and Canada.
Yeah. And when he is glorified as a saint, his hagiography is going to be a little harder or a little more poignant for some people in the US to listen to, because some of us actually met him while he was still alive, while he was still walking the earth, right? So it's not even to say that it's going to be equivalent to the passage that I just read, or, you know, if you've lost your brother or your father or your mother, or, you know, a family member. But it's
some people would say more so.
It's different when it's someone that you knew, right? And you don't stop telling their stories because they've died, because it's painful. You don't stop doing the things because it's painful, right? You do the thing and think of them, to give a rough paraphrase.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's a hard thing. I don't say that lightly. I mean, Isaac, I'm sure you've had experiences like this, and Ian and I have talked about this quite a lot, but in the US, I think the whole notion of, oh, I suffered a trauma is a phrase that is far abused beyond what it ought to be. But that's not to say that we in the US haven't experienced those things. I don't think that I know anyone who hasn't suffered a death in the family, or the death of a dear friend or mentor, or seen something horrible happening. One of my really good friends was, and I still regret this, you know, to this day, but a couple of years ago, he texted me pretty late at night, and I was tired and didn't want to go do anything. I was wanting to be by myself and read. And he texted me and said, "Hey man, you want to go grab a beer or have a smoke or something?" And I was like, no, I'm in for the night. And a couple of days later, when we were hanging out, he said, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Hey, you know, I'm sorry about that. I just wasn't feeling up to it. What happened?" And he proceeds to relate to me the story that he rolled up on an accident that had just happened, where a pedestrian got hit by a car going like 65 miles an hour. And he was hands-on with that guy that died. And I was like, dang, I mean, that's trauma. That's a horrible thing to have to see. Like, I should have been there for that. You know, I should have been there for my friend. You know, he needed to, I say I of all people, which is a bit presumptuous, but I know what that kind of thing is like. I should have recognized something in the tone of what he said and been there to talk about that, because as it stands, as far as I know, he just went and bought a pack of cigarettes and went home and had a beer and sat there and thought about it. I'm like, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but that kind of thing is easier to suffer through when you have someone side by side, I think.
Yeah. And I think this is a good thing for anybody who's listening. Like, you know, if you're struggling with any of these things, or if you're struggling at all, you know, obviously, like, we're here to talk to you, and we've all been through those things. And I think that something that relates to this is my wife. She lost her brother, her best friend hung herself, and then her grandfather all died in 5 months. And, you know, there was no way to understand this, and everything reminded her of them. And I know for a fact that the Orthodox Church has helped her tremendously for just being able to get out of bed in the morning and not feeling that way. So if you're feeling any of these type of ways and you have a parish nearby, or a spiritual father or a priest that you can go see, I definitely I recommend it, because it's
and it's good to speak to your friends about it. If I may share one more brief story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for boring you with personal details, Isaac.
No.
But your priest, your spiritual father, your father confessor, and your brothers and sisters in Christ are there to help you with stuff like this. There was a particular incident where when I was still working in medicine, where I had a small child die that I wasn't involved in the direct care of, but I ended up in the aftermath of that, and it was a bloody mess. And for a couple of months afterwards, I thought I was good, which in retrospect was unequivocally not the case. But the not terribly long after that, one of my good friends, his wife had just given birth to their second daughter, I believe. And I was with a couple other friends of mine who are Orthodox as well, and they've got a couple of kids now. And my friend's wife was like, "Oh, Nate, did you hear that so and so's daughter was just born?" I was like, "No. Do you have any pictures?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, here they are." And they showed me photos of this little girl. And like, for anyone who hangs out with me on a regular basis, I'm either jovial or stoic. I'm not given to outbursts of emotion at all. Like I'm pretty.
I have some other words for what you are, but I won't share them.
Like I'm not given to being emotionally overwrought. I'll put it that way. Or at least if I am, I don't do it publicly. And my friend showed me, he's like, "Oh, here's so-and-so's daughter." And this little girl looked really similar to the little girl that died. And I completely lost it. Like, I don't do public emotional breakdowns. That's not a thing. But I was like sitting in a chair with my head in my hands, weeping unconsolably. And because this little girl looked like the one that died. And it's like, and so my friend, my other friend, the gal's husband, who I've been friends with for a really long time, just came over and we sat there for a while, and he let me get that out of my system, and then kind of heard the story and helped bear that burden. And I won't say that made things okay, but it made them better. It was easier to deal with them, with the emotions I was dealing with at the time. And that's.
But also what you did after that is it kind of goes with this whole thing of doing something to remember people.
Yeah.
You talk to our spiritual father,
I made an icon of the saint whose feast day she died on.
Yeah,
Actually,
and it's
I
like,
have that in my iconostasis.
and there's things like that we can do to remember the people we've lost. Just like when you light a candle in Narthex, it's like, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing to remember the people we've lost. It can be a beautiful thing. It can be a way to show homage to them, not being here physically on the earth. And I think it's important to remember that. And it's, we've talked about it obviously in this episode. Death is inevitable, but it is also probably something that Orthodox Christians look forward to more than other people,
Right. That's something that we ought not fear.
Yeah. So I know that kind of got dark, kind of got a little dark there for a little bit.
You can't read Tolkien as some sort of happy-go-lucky thing. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, it's too happy," and I'm like, we're not reading the same book.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, even The Hobbit, right? The Hobbit is a children's story, and like you can read through that and not be emotionally involved, but when you get to Thorin's death speech, right? If you can get past that and it still be like, "Yeah, whatever, that was pretty happy," it's like, are you serious? Like, no, that's sad. That's horribly sad.
Yeah.
And there's actually, you can find an interview with Tolkien on YouTube, where the reporter that's interviewing him said, "Yeah, I've heard people say that your book is so lighthearted that it's it doesn't touch on reality all that much." And Tolkien kind of laughs and goes, "Oh, I mean, maybe there are some people that think that, but I've got friends that think it's so dark they won't read it unless it's in the middle of Lent." And it's a legit
Yeah.
quote. It's a really entertaining interview to listen to. But he's like, yeah, it's not a happy-go-lucky story.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap this up for potentially, well, not part one, but part one of many future conversations. And
So if you want to listen to the entirety of Lord of the Rings being read by Isaac and I, just jump in and you'll hear all these random quotes from the histories of Middle Earth, the Silmarillion, the Lord of the Rings itself, all the extracurricular writings, and you'll eventually get the entire story over like 15 years.
Well, Isaac, we really appreciate you. I know we went, over our allotted time that me and you previously spoke about doing an hour. It's honestly Nathan's fault. Every time I think we can do something in an hour, it ends up going way over. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. And if you're new to Tolkien, reach out to these guys. I don't know, they can probably give you some insight. If you're new to Orthodoxy, reach out to a priest. Don't reach out to us.
Combined between the three of us, we have like maybe 4.5 years of being in Orthodoxy. Maybe.
So, but to end things, I want to say that a star shines upon our meeting, and I'm sure you nerds know exactly what that is from.
Great.
Did I do that well?
I mean, it coming from you is kind of entertaining because I know you've not actually read the passage in which that phrase occurs.
I think I googled like Tolkien quotes or something. No,
Tolkien meeting quote.
no,
geez.
no, I'm kidding. But yeah, very blessed to have you here. I always like to make Nathan feel uncomfortable.
You don't have to try very hard
in any situation. But yeah, make sure you guys follow Traditionalist Project on Instagram, and then the Traditionalist Project on Spotify. It's different on there, right?
Yeah, the podcast bit is the Traditionalist Project.
Cool.
But
I'll link things like I did last time. And yeah, man, I hope you're having a blessed Lent. I know it can be.
Pray for me.
Yeah, that's a good point to end on. How is you guys' Lent going? Because this is round number 1 for both of you.
Yeah. What about you, real quick?
Pain. no, it's I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm gonna like full disclosure, it's extremely difficult. Not the food thing. Not
No.
That's the easiest part.
I would agree with you there.
It's the
everything else part.
Yeah. I mean, I had to actually sit and speak with my priest for a while because I'm just struggling. Like,
I feel you, man.
Like I'm spiritually, like, it feels like a battle. It feels like a battle. But it's a necessary battle.
If there's my lady gave me some advice the other day. It's not to be overly emotional, and that is in regards to being overly joyous or showing like that you're disconcerted with something, to a certain extent, because the evil one picks up on those things and feeds off them. Because I've been going through some stuff, and it's like I'm letting it bother me to the extent that the evil one's like, oh, this is bothering you? Well, let's amp it up a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I know I don't know much, but I would just say to anybody listening, if you're going with things, just this is a great time to, like Isaac said, talk to your priest or to focus on prayer. Pick up a Tolkien book, pick up the Lives of the Saints, pick up the Bible, and just try to focus elsewhere. And the dietary part of it can be rough for some people, but I think when we're really deep into it, and we still have 30 days, 29 days left.
We're about halfway through. This is the third Sunday of Lent, I believe.
So yeah, but
it's the 23rd. That's 23rd of April is Pascha this year, if my memory is correct. 23rd or 24th.
Yeah. So and yeah, Del Taco, man. Del Taco's got some great bean and rice burritos. just putting it out there.
Just make your own food. Make it simple. Like
that's what I'm doing. I just kind of making my own stuff. Yeah.
Pick a thing that you're going to eat and go for it. But also, the hard. I will say, in concurrence with what Ian and Isaac have both said, the hardest part is prayer. Like I don't mind the dietary thing as much. I mean, I definitely would well, I won't say I won't phrase that precisely the way that I was going to, but there's not a lot I wouldn't do for a slice of cheese right now.
Dude, seriously?
But
Honestly?
all things considered, that's the easiest part. Like harder than that, harder than abstaining from particular foods is saying, okay, well, I'm going to actually spend a few minutes in prayer today. That is, and for whatever reason, Sundays are always really, really hard to do your canona on. I don't know why. Well, I have suspicions, but for me at least, I can get up at freaking 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'll do some prayers, and that's easy. But Sunday, it's like, oh, you got good sleep tonight, which is rare. Why don't you get up since you've slept for X number of hours and do your prayers? And it's no, I'll do that at liturgy. It's like, that's not what liturgy's for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I would say Lent is a perfect time to learn how to suffer fruitfully.
Yeah.
I
agree. Well, Isaac, thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. We love you, and we'll be praying for you. And hopefully you can make your way out here. Like I've said before, I got a room here for you. Come visit. We'll hit the monastery together. You can come to our little tiny mountain parish and see.
I would love it.
We do have a relic of the cross up here.
Yeah, today we venerated the cross, and our cross has a piece of the actual cross in it.
Really?
And they actually have another relic of the cross at St. Anthony's as well.
And the burning bush.
Yeah. And they have St. Joseph the Hesychist skull down there. And I want to say there's 4 or 5 other major relics.
There's the Romanovs.
In addition, that's in addition to it. This one's not as well known actually, but there's a little chapel to St. Seraphim of Sarov, one of my favorite places to go pray anywhere in the state.
Isn't that the name you chose?
It is.
You got to come see the chapel for St. Seraphim of Sarov.
Yeah, beautiful little Russian style
Outdoor
chapel. Really awesome. But you go there and there's off to the side, there's this little, like 4x6 or 4x8 icon of the Romanovs, right? Of the sainted Romanov martyrs. And there's a little hole drilled in it's the bottom left-hand corner that has a little plexiglass insert in it that has some of their relics in it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that
so many people probably overlook.
Nobody advertises it. But you show up and somebody's like, "Oh, you want to come see the Romanov relics?" And you're like, "Wait, what?" And you go and you check it out, and it's awesome. It's one of my favorite places to go pray.
Yeah, relics are a whole different
thing. That's where I find myself in the middle of the night or in the morning before and after services. So yeah, man, you're always welcome here. We'll talk offline about all those things. And also Montanica is coming up, and then Father Josiah Trenham has something coming up in June. So make sure you guys check that. Make sure you guys check that out. I think it's like June 3rd through 6th, and then June 17th through 19th. There's 2 Orthodox events. I think those are going to be very fruitful for everybody. But yeah, Thank you guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and
come hang out with the inactive Road to Paradise podcast Instagram page that just has random photos on occasion with random live streams where I'm sitting there drinking and smoking.
We're going to have to talk about that. All right, man. Isaac, appreciate you. And
thanks for bringing me on.
We'll talk soon.
Love y'all.
For sure.
Good to have you, man.
God bless.